Okay, so good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today. As you'll probably know, the title of today's event is How to Achieve a Successful Pharmacy Sale. So as you might expect, we'll be covering things you should do, consider, and be aware of in the run-up to and throughout the sales process to ensure things go as smoothly as possible, and also to ensure your pharmacy is in the best and most attractive shape it can be when we bring it to market. However, today's webinar is not only for those selling their pharmacy, as several topics will be covered. Several topics covered will be applicable to all pharmacy owners, even if selling is currently only a distant consideration. So by the time we wrap up, am I speaking really quickly? Sorry. So by the time we wrap up, everyone should have a better understanding of the current market and some meaningful actions for their business. Today's agenda will be starting with an update of the current UK pharmacy market. We'll be talking about the key steps of selling a pharmacy. We'll be looking at tax efficiency, getting some expert legal advice, and something that will just be, I guess, something we're going to be touching on, or is going to be a concern for us, or something to be aware of throughout is risk mitigation, something that's, on everyone's mind at the moment, I'm sure. And finally, a Q&A. A chance for you to ask the questions and discuss your circumstances completely confidentially with our expert panel. There's a Q&A button that should be on your webinar panel somewhere. If you look, there should be, if you move your mouse, there should be a button either at the top or the bottom that says Q&A. So if you click on that, you can submit questions there, and we'll then answer these questions, or as many as we can at the end of the session. Just going to share my screen so you can see the slides that we've prepared today. Okay, can I just ask someone else from my team whether those slides have shared properly? Can you see that first slide? Okay, yeah, I can see you nodding, Paul, so I'll take that, yeah. Okay, let me just run through. So, okay, we've got this agenda here, risk mitigation, Q&A. Okay, and I will hand to Paul. Paul will provide an update on the current UK market, UK pharmacy sales market, and advise you of the necessary steps you need to take when selling your business. Paul, I'm going to hand you over remote control. Just a second. Remember to unmute yourself. Okay, Paul, over to you.
Thanks, Sam. Hello and welcome to everyone. For those of you who haven't dealt with Hutchings Consultants before, I briefly wanted to explain that we are the largest independent pharmacy-only agent in the UK, and our typical sales will range from single pharmacies with a turnover around £300,000 up to small groups with around £100 million turnover. We've been approved and recommended by the NPA to its members for the selling and buying of pharmacy businesses since 2005. And we are currently the only NPA partner supplier to reach platinum status. We have an excellent reputation within the sector. Sorry, bear with me.
That's all right. Is that not clicking through, Paul?
No, it's not.
Let me just see. That might have been me. So, okay, if you, yeah, click on it again. That might have been me. Sorry. So click on it again and get it back to the point you need. Sorry about that. Okay, can you click on it now and then will that work?
No, sorry, that's. Oh,
there you go, yeah.
There we go. Okay, sorry about that, everybody. We have an excellent reputation within the sector, and we're very clear we only work for you, the seller. Overall, we feel this provides us with a wealth of experience and knowledge in order to assist you when it comes to selling your pharmacy, and enables us to provide you with an insight on current factors affecting the market. Sorry, bear with me. That's not clicking through. Sorry, Sam, can you...
Yeah, okay, I'm still there with you. Sorry this isn't working for you. I'm just going to remove remote control and then give it back to you, and then you should be able to just go straight from there. Okay, so if you then try again, sorry about this, if you click and it should then just work as normal. Okay, great. Thanks, I'll leave everything alone.
Thank you. As Sam has mentioned, the main theme of this evening's webinar is to explain how to achieve a successful pharmacy sale and the process involved in taking your business to the market right through to completion. Before moving on to explaining the agent's role in this, I'm sure as a pharmacy owner and potential seller, you'll be interested to understand what is happening in the market currently. In terms of the values achieved, pence in pound figures give a broad overview. And you will see from this slide that between 2018 and 2020, the average figure decreased across the United Kingdom. The various government-imposed funding cuts took their toll on the market once the impact fed through to the trading accounts. However, as you will see from the more recent data for 2021 so far, there is a more positive outlook currently, which has resulted in a significant uplift in the average price achieved to 95p. This increase reflects the fact that during the second half of 2020, there's been a noticeable reduction in the volume of pharmacies we've seen coming onto the market for sale throughout the UK. A wave of less profitable pharmacies, offloaded by the multiples and larger groups, swept through the marketplace in recent years, but this oversupply has been largely reversed, and we're seeing fewer instructions coming onto the market than anticipated. As you might expect, there is a diverse range of prices around different parts of the UK, as pharmacies sold in Scotland and Wales, for example, have generally achieved higher pence in pound figures than those sold in England in recent years. In particular, Scotland continues to outperform the rest of the UK, averaging somewhere between £1.50 to £2, which is unseen elsewhere. This graph shows you the multiple of EBITDA, otherwise known as the adjusted net profit, achieved on sales since 2018. As I just mentioned, we had a wave of pharmacy sales, particularly in 2019 and 2020, where many of which were making a loss or barely profitable. And therefore, buyers often reverted to making an offer based on pence in pound methodology, which pushed up the EBITDA multiples as a result. More recently, we have started to see a higher percentage of more profitable pharmacies sold, which has reduced this multiple as a result of buyers reverting back to valuing by the EBITDA methodology instead. A key performance indicator important to both buyers and sellers is the gross profit percentage margin. As this graph demonstrates, since the reduction in margin seen in 2018, there has been a stabilisation at around 31%, which is encouraging to see and reflects the hard work invested by owners to maintain margins in these challenging times. Since the start of the first lockdown last year, we've experienced a high level of activity from buyers, which has been very encouraging to see. Since the beginning of last year, we've seen a big increase in the number of new buyers registering with us to date. During the period from January to December last year, we registered 45% more buyers compared to the same period in 2019, which is obviously a big uplift. Many of these have been keen first-time buyers, but we've also seen an increase in existing pharmacy owners and regional group owner registrations, as well as investors coming from outside of pharmacy, which is a positive signal moving forwards. We've seen an uplift also in the number of buyers making an offer per pharmacy, which as a seller you want to encourage, as this creates a competitive environment and provides the best opportunity for your agent to negotiate the best price and terms when selling. The major banks are still very supportive of pharmacy, and several appear to have a strong desire to heavily increase their lending to the sector, although credit and underwriting teams across the board are taking a long, hard look at all borrowing applications presented to them. They're also asking for higher deposit contributions from buyers in order to increase their security, but in the main, there's definitely an appetite to lend. An area which remains a concern though, particularly in England, is the market entry process for change of ownership applications. Whilst there was an inevitable slowdown last year as a result of COVID-19 on employees' ability to work, we continue to experience long delays. This is having a knock-on effect to sale timescales. We understand many local area teams have been assigned to other duties around the vaccination rollout, which has had an inevitable impact on the process. In November last year, there was also a change to some of the regulations, which effectively lengthened the time taken to complete the process. So our advice to clients now is that applications should be submitted as soon as possible wherever relevant. To demonstrate the buoyancy in the current market, I wanted to quickly show you two examples of sales we've agreed in the last few weeks. For confidentiality reasons, I'm not at liberty to divulge too much information at this stage, but this first example is a pharmacy based in the West Midlands with a turnover in the region of £990,000. and dispensing an average of around 9,800 items per month. Following a period of marketing, we received a total of 18 offers from 10 parties. And that resulted in an offer, or a sale agreed price, shall we say, of over in excess of £50,000 off the marketing price. Deposit has been exchanged. We're now proceeding with the legal due diligence. The next example is a pharmacy based in Cheshire with a turnover in the region of 800,000, dispensing an average of around 5,600 items per month. During the offer process, we received 11 offers from 8 parties and agreed a price £150,000 in excess of the marketing price. Now, attempting to forecast the market for 2021 in these turbulent times is an almost impossible task with so many variables to consider. However, as we've seen, there is a high buyer demand currently and a continuing lack of available pharmacies for sale. As a result, in the short term, we anticipate a further stabilisation in prices at the very least, if not a continuing increase. So for those who feel they are ready to sell, it would certainly be wise to consider taking advantage of this. I hope that's provided you with a helpful insight into the current sales market. I'll now move on to the various important steps of taking a pharmacy to the market, accepting an offer, and moving into the legal due diligence process. So step 1 is the specialist valuation. It's more important than ever to ascertain and understand what the correct marketing price for your pharmacy business is. In order to fully understand your business and be able to recommend an accurate market price for you, a competent, experienced agent will need to gather in your financial information to undertake the valuation. At this stage, we usually request the information as you see here. There may be additional documentation we require depending on your particular pharmacy, but the more information we have at this stage, the more accurate we can be with the valuation. This will reduce the risk of you being disappointed when offers are called in. As part of the valuation process, we review the information you've supplied and establish an EBITDA figure via an adjusted profit and loss. A multiplier is then added to the EBITDA to calculate the value. The multiplier figure varies according to many factors, but a key decider is based on our extensive experience in the marketplace. When it comes to determining the value of a pharmacy, there are many factors an agent needs to consider. This slide shows some of those factors, but there are many more not mentioned. While some of these factors, such as on-POS and private scripts, will have a definitive monetary effect on value, others, such as the level of competition in the local area or business potential, are perhaps a little harder to define, but nonetheless need to be taken into account when finalising the valuation. We're sometimes asked to provide a valuation on very limited information, such as just the turnover or item numbers, which isn't really advisable as it can lead to misleading figures. A professional agent will require a certain amount of information from you in order to understand your business and provide you with a valuation which is credible. Most sellers understandably want to achieve the best price possible when it comes to selling their pharmacy. As a business owner, you've invested over the years a huge amount of time, emotion and money, not to mention endured the associated stresses of running your business, and it's important that you feel rewarded for this once you hand over the reins to a new owner. As you've just seen, there are a large number of factors that affect the valuation, and many owners ask us which areas of the business they should focus on to increase its market value. Again, whilst there are a multitude of factors that could be mentioned, there are perhaps 4 key areas which we tend to focus on, as they can have some significant implications and affect the saleability of the business. The gross profit percentage margin is one of the key performance indicators that will be at the forefront of most buyers' minds when reviewing a potential opportunity. As I mentioned earlier, the average margin currently is around 30 to 32%, although again, this will vary greatly in different parts of the UK, with London pharmacies still demonstrating some of the highest margins. Many of our clients advise us they are now spending a greater amount of their working time researching the best buying prices, or have even tasked a member of staff for this role where capacity allows them to do so. An improvement on the margin should eventually result in an improved EBITDA figure. Working hard to improve your margin will be time wasted if you allow your business expenses to run out of control. Keeping a tight rein on your costs is obviously of huge importance, but becomes even more so if you're planning to sell. Both buyers and their accountant will most likely want to undertake financial due diligence, and your profit and loss will be heavily scrutinised. Staff pay increases and bonuses, for example, will affect your bottom line, and if ongoing, could potentially impact your final sale price, particularly if these salaries are above accepted industry norms. We've had instances in the past, for example, where a client has wanted to reward a member of staff and agreed a significant ongoing bonus as part of a salary review, without realising that this could impact the final sale price they achieve when they come to sell. I'm certainly not suggesting that staff shouldn't be rewarded, but just bear in mind that increasing your costs will impact on your bottom line profitability. Although across the UK there is now an emphasis in the various remuneration contracts to provide patients with more clinical services, the volume of items a pharmacy dispenses is still key to both turnover and saleability. Most buyers are attracted to a pharmacy which can demonstrate increase in numbers, and therefore this should be a key area to focus on as part of a longer term plan to sell. Finally, pharmacies operating on a leasehold basis should ideally have 15 years remaining on the lease at the point of going to the market. The banks will usually match the term of a buyer's loan with the term remaining on the lease. If you have a lease of less than 10 years, this could present an issue to a buyer seeking to obtain affordable finance, particularly if they are a first-time buyer with no trading experience, although a buyer with more assets and an existing owner may find it a little less problematic. Therefore, your lease should be reviewed, and if there is less than 10 years remaining, consider extending it if possible. But speak to your selling agent before doing so, as they should be able to guide you on the best strategy around this. So, to step 2 of our process is the confidential meeting, subject to COVID regulations, of course. This is an opportunity for us to meet you and spend some time understanding your objectives and any concerns you may have about selling. The meeting normally takes place once your staff have left for the day and will allow us in uninhibited access to view the premises. Alternatively, if this isn't possible for any reason, if you prefer, we can conduct a mystery shop and meet you off-site at a suitable venue. At the meeting, we discuss and agree the marketing strategy, which we will try and tie in with any points from the conversation and objectives you may have. It is also a further opportunity to discuss any queries you may have generally or specific to your situation. We then move on to the next step, which is preparing the sales literature. Our sales brochure is designed to be eye-catching to potential buyers, as you need to attract their attention quickly, particularly when they will be receiving brochures on other opportunities. The information we disclose focuses on the most salient points, demonstrating profitability and potential. The key is also to provide sufficient information at an early stage in order to reduce the volume of questions a buyer may ask. We only start the marketing once you, the seller, have approved the document and are happy to move forwards. A confidential listing can be added onto the Hutchings website, taking care to avoid disclosing the exact location of the pharmacy for sale. In addition to this, we prepare a separate financials pack, which includes the accounts, FP34s, VAT returns, OTC figures, and a copy of the lease if applicable. As part of preparing to market a pharmacy, we dedicate a large part of our time researching and identifying potential buyers we wish to contact. This research will consider factors such as who is currently active in the market, do they have sufficient funds available, previous experience with a buyer, buyer's criteria and ethos, their geographic location, etc. Only potential buyers who have registered with us formally and signed our non-disclosure agreement are contacted. We also remind buyers throughout the process the need to keep the sale confidential. We consider each pharmacy as an individual sale and tailor the marketing approach accordingly based on the business's unique factors. Our standard approach is to create an initial shortlist of the best buyers taken from our database of several thousand registered potential buyers. The selected parties will initially receive the memorandum of sale, and if they have a further interest, they will then receive the financials pack. These parties are followed up for their feedback, and where suitable, viewings will be arranged at a time to suit you. Each viewing will be followed up and feedback provided to you. In order to provide the greatest opportunity to secure the best price and terms for our client, we use our experience to market the business and attract interest. The period of marketing where viewings take place is around 6 to 8 weeks on average. Although each pharmacy sale is different, this can sometimes be shorter or longer depending on the circumstances. Hutchings has a tried and tested structured offer process, which we've applied over a number of years. Occasionally, we may recommend to a seller that they consider an individual offer on an ad hoc basis. But in the majority of cases, once we are at a stage where it's appropriate to call in offers, in agreement with yourself, we invite interested parties to submit their indicative offers in writing by a specific date. We use a template offer which avoids misunderstandings as to what is being paid, particularly on the more complicated share sale route, which is vital. As part of the offer letter, we request proof of funds and also the parties' agreement to pay a security deposit of a minimum £20,000 if their offer is accepted. Shortly after the initial round of offers, we move to the best and final offer round, which enables buyers an opportunity to improve and fine-tune their first offer if they wish to do so, once they've received some limited feedback from ourselves. The 2 rounds of offers help create a competitive environment between buyers, which allows us to negotiate the best price and terms possible. Once an offer is accepted, we then move into the legal stage. I won't go into too much depth about this stage at the moment, as this will be covered in more detail by Tim and Artif shortly, but we arrange for the deposit to be paid to and held by your appointed solicitor. The deposit is held in accordance with a deposit and exclusivity agreement that both you and the buyer sign, and in exchange, the buyer receives a period of exclusivity whereby other potential buyers are excluded from making an offer. We then issue the heads of terms confirming the sale to you, your buyer, and both sets of solicitors and accountants. Our role as an agent now changes from one of marketing to that of sales progression, as we liaise with all parties during this period to ensure the transaction is progressing forward. Once an offer is accepted, an average timescale to reach completion is around 4 to 6 months. However, there are many factors that can affect this and impact the sale significantly, such as COVID-19, bank delays, NHS fitness to practice and change of ownership, market entry applications, and lease issues, to name but a few. There are several key do's and don'ts to mention when considering selling, which you should be aware of and will help you avoid timely delays which could ultimately jeopardise your sale and create undue stress. Firstly, do plan ahead your exit strategy. You may feel you're not quite yet at that point of selling, but the earlier you start to plan and prepare for a sale, the greater your chances of securing a better price and achieving a smoother transaction. You should consult with your accountant to understand what is the most tax-efficient sales structure for you, as this will depend on your business and the assets held. You can then discuss this with an experienced agent who should be able to advise you on how you should prepare and highlight any areas you may need to address in order to ensure as smooth a sale as possible. Put your house in order. This point ties in with planning your exit strategy, as the earlier you address potential issues which could delay a sale, the better. For example, you may need to renew leases, move assets out of a limited company, put staff contracts in place, or deal with tax issues, which in most cases you're best advised to deal with before a sale begins. Do appoint professional advisors who have pharmacy sales experience in order to ensure your sale progresses as smoothly as possible. It's vital that you employ advisors who've proven experience in pharmacy transactions. This is a niche area of legal and accounting expertise, and therefore don't assume your usual high street solicitor or accountant have the necessary ability to advise you. Lastly, once you've found a buyer, don't be tempted to relax and feel that you can sit back as the sale goes through. Both the buyer and their lender will keep a close eye on the business performance as the sale progresses, and you don't want to allow the buyer an opportunity to reduce the price if there is a fall off in trading figures. Only once you've completed can you finally take that foot off the pedal. Before I hand you back to Sam, I would like to make you aware of an exciting new scheme we've just launched to pharmacy owners who wish to sell their pharmacy business called the Help to Sell scheme. Having recognised the impact of abortive sale costs for sellers, Hutchings Consultants have joined forces with Hutchings Accountants and Clarke Mairs solicitors to offer this new package. The package is designed to remove the financial risk of incurring professional advisors' fees should you agree a sale which fails to complete for any reason, while safe in the knowledge you have pharmacy experts working for you. If you instruct all three parties to act for you in your sale, you will benefit from this no sale, no fee scheme, which means you will only pay advisor fees once your sale is completed. All of our fees are fully transparent and agreed with you up front and prior to marketing. We believe this brand new scheme will provide valuable peace of mind to our clients. So that concludes my part of this evening's presentation. If you'd like to discuss the Help to Sell scheme further or are ready to take the next steps towards selling, please contact either myself or one of my colleagues to discuss how we may assist you. We can offer you a free verbal valuation and a free tax review. We can also arrange a confidential meeting with one of our experienced pharmacy consultants as well.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Paul. Really informative. You can take a breath now. That was well done. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to take back control just for a second, if I can. Yep. And then next up, we have Tim Clarke from Clarke Mairs Solicitors. Tim will advise on all legal aspects of selling your pharmacy. He will also provide tips on how to avoid some of the unnecessary pitfalls that can delay a sale. Tim, I'm going to hand you control, and I think what you'll need to do is just click into that screen first once before then navigating to your keyboard buttons for the left and right there. So where are we? Tim, you should have control now.
We'll give it a quick test.
Brilliant.
Back. Okay, yeah. Good evening, everybody. Paul, thanks very much. Really interesting. I'd like to see everybody's faces right now when they know that next up is the lawyers and the faces. But unfortunately, you are going to need us. So as Sam has said, my role tonight is to briefly take you through the points that we as solicitors, having the experience of acting in hundreds of pharmacy transactions, really think are worth highlighting to you this evening. I'm also joined by a couple of other members of my team who work with me on pharmacy matters. First of all, I have Laura.
Hi everyone, thanks for coming this evening. Yeah, as advised by Tim, I assist Tim and Alex on the pharmacy deals, and I deal with the property aspects of your sales and acquisitions.
Okay, thanks, Laura. And we have Alex Robson as well.
Yeah, hi everybody. So I'm Alex Robson. I'm a solicitor at Clarke Mairs. I deal with the corporate side of things, work closely with Tim and Laura on the pharmacy transactions, and assist with helping you get the sale.
Many thanks. Laura and Alex will be particularly useful in inputting and dealing with any questions you have after or the presentation. Moving on. A basic theme that you'll be picking up from what Paul has said, from what I've said, and the other presenters, is preparation for a sale. Using the well-known phrase that we've all become used to through the Brexit negotiation, an oven-ready transaction would be marvellous to get to. And the way we deal with that is by becoming involved very early to help you prepare for the sale. So it is extremely important to engage those advisors early. No disrespect to what Paul has just said, but I'm bound to say toward the end, I got the impression that traditionally there was this idea of it's when you get a sale agreed that you then go off and instruct your solicitors. Well, if you leave it until that late, then you're not going to proceed swiftly with the transaction. What we like to do when we're acting on a sale is to get involved the moment you make contact with Hutchings, and Hutchings are pretty convinced that this is a serious potential transaction. We like to become involved at that stage and start working with you on the no sale, no fee arrangement to iron out all the problems that we think a buyer's lawyers and a buyer's accountants, when we work with the accountants, might pick up on. So we say engage early with us and let us work with you. You've got nothing to lose in doing so. Supply all the information we ask for. The moment you sign up with us, we will send you a shopping list, and that will be a comprehensive request for information. It will ask you about your property. Paul already touched on the leases. I can tell you that generally the biggest headache we have when dealing with pharmacy sales or purchases arise from the property aspects. There's always something on the property that needs attending to, even if it's as straightforward as asking the landlord to extend the lease, which frankly landlords shouldn't really have a problem with when you consider the investment value that they're adding. Pharmacists are pretty good covenant, so but it's important to get all the information to us so that we can look at it and we can start asking you any other questions we need, so that we can get a whole pack together. We can preempt the problems that the buyer's lawyers, and importantly, the buyer's borrower's lawyers might pick up on. Do you need to involve your bank or other lenders? If it's a retirement sale, you have a single pharmacy, it's a retirement sale, it might not be particularly relevant. Certainly if you don't have any borrowings, it won't be. But even if you do, it'll be a matter toward the end of the transaction, your lawyers contacting your lenders and finding out how much they need in order to pay off the security, clear off the charge on the property. But if you're selling perhaps a pharmacy out of a company where you may have corporate security in respect of other borrowings, you might need to be thinking about deeds of partial release or any other requirements of the bank if you're not clearing them off completely. So it's something to think about early. It's one of those things that can get left, forgotten about, doesn't need attending to. We, by becoming involved early, will look at what security you have. We will look at Companies House, what security is registered there. We will look at the land registry. We will ask you the questions. And if it needs sorting, we'll be on the case quite quickly. You will understand from what I've just said that the process does require a lot of effort and time. It will involve you in that time and effort. There's no question about it. But if you want to achieve a successful sale within a shorter timescale as possible, then it's something you need to do and it will be worth it. We do try and make it as painless as possible. The information request we send you, we tell you, go through it, complete as much as you can. Unsure about anything, give us a call, get it back to us, we'll review it. We will come back to you on any bits and pieces that we need your further input on. So it's not something that we act as a post box. You don't send it back to us and then whatever you sent back to us, we send out. You need lawyers who are proactive, who look at what you're providing. Okay. Sale structure. Two types of sale. A share sale. This is when you are operating your pharmacy through a limited company and the NHS contract is with that limited company. A limited company has its own legal identity, in as much as you as a personal individual can go in and sign a contract, that limited company can do it. So if you are operating the pharmacy through the limited company, it will involve you selling the shares in that company to the buyer, assuming you go down this route. You could still, through the limited company, go with an asset sale, but more often than not, if you have a limited company and all it does is operate that pharmacy, then you will sell the shares in that company. There's more work required in dealing with that, unfortunately, from your lawyers and accountants, and consequently, it usually is a little bit more expensive because, going back to what I said a moment ago, the limited company has its own legal identity. It can incur its own liabilities, and anybody who buys the shares will be buying that company with its liabilities. So the best example, corporation tax and VAT. If there are any outstanding liabilities in respect of those, when the buyer completes, the buyer will be inheriting the company with those liabilities. Consequently, they will want to know far more about the company, about the business, than they would if it were only an asset sale. And yeah, importantly, in terms of timescale, certainly NHS consent is not required because there is no change of ownership. The ownership and operation of the NHS contract remains with the company. For a seller, there are certainly potential tax advantages. We are not tax experts. We always have a big caveat. We do not advise on tax. So that's all I'm going to say on that. Atif will almost certainly have something to say about it in his presentation after myself. The other is the asset sale. This is where you are either operating the pharmacy business as a unincorporated partnership or sole trader, or for some reason, your limited company, you aren't going to sell the shares in your limited company. Therefore, you're going to sell the assets of the business. The assets of the business is the goodwill, the entitlement to run the pharmacy by taking over the pharmacy contract, the fixtures and fittings in the premises, the stock, although the stock will also be a share sale, and any other bits and pieces that are useful in the business. You'll include all of those in the asset sale. The big distinction, though, is that does require a change of ownership to the pharmacy contract. That is a procedural aspect. I think on 2 occasions there have been problems through the fitness to practice. One was for a drink driving offence, and another one was, I can't remember, where it did cause issues. But assuming that none of you will have those types of issues, it's a process that you will go through. You will fill in the forms. Both Hutchings and ourselves help you with those forms. We input into them. We will review them. There is a lot of information asked for, but you should have it all available. And it goes into NHS England. It used to take maybe 3 months. As Paul alluded to, by reason of the COVID crisis, it's now taking, well, in some cases, I mean, well, I won't ask Alex to input here, but in some cases, it's taking in excess of 6 months and even longer. It does vary from region to region. So if you are operating the pharmacy through a company, take advice on which option you should go for. Okay, the heads of terms, initial pros and initial documents. Paul has said that the agents will prepare the heads of terms. They don't usually require much by way of legal input. Sometimes they do. We have one at the moment that there's a sort of quasi partnership, so we inputted on that, but they are generally speaking a document that sets out the terms that the agents will have negotiated for you, and say who is the buyer, who is the seller, what is the price, proposed timescales, and those will then be circulated, as Paul has already said. Deposit agreements. Typically, a deposit agreement will be put into place whereby the buyers will, as a sign of good faith, be asked to put up a sum of money. The minimum amount we now see is £20,000, and that comes across from the buyer and is usually held by the solicitors. acting for the seller on the basis that if the buyer then fails to proceed without good reason, that deposit will be forfeit. A timescale is usually imposed, but provided generally that the buyers are seen to be acting swiftly, if they haven't met the timescale, I suppose they're not acting swiftly. But if they are acting, and we all still think that it is going to happen, those target dates are not really regarded as anything, oh, if you don't do it, you are going to lose your deposit. Everybody acts in good faith and they want to achieve a sale. So provided the transaction is progressing and an end is in sight, then the target date that is specified in the deposit agreement is flexible. But nevertheless, a good reason for a buyer pulling out will not be because he's had a change of heart, will not be because his personal circumstances have changed. It will only be if there is a reasonable reason highlighted to him by his lawyers or accountants that cannot then be resolved, that the buyer says, well, this isn't what I bargained for, and I'm therefore going to walk away. If that's the case, then it's probably going to be reasonable for him to get his deposit back. But usually it doesn't happen. Okay. Confidentiality agreements, again, mentioned by Paul. They're not always required, but usually you might want to say, well, if I'm going to negotiate with you and I'm going to supply you with lots of very interesting information concerning my business, we would like you to enter into a confidentiality agreement. It's a fairly standard document that basically says what you might imagine. They will keep all that information confidential, and also the fact that they're having any negotiation with you will be kept confidential. There's then exclusivity. All of these documents, these heads here, they can usually be rolled up into a single document. So the exclusivity is that the buyer will say to you, well, in return for me paying you that deposit in particular, I do want some exclusivity. I do want the comfort that you won't be going off and leaving me in the lurch and talking to other people. So you do agree a period of exclusivity under which you say you will do that. Okay. We then come on to the most time-consuming part of the whole exercise, the due diligence. The buyer is going to want to find out as much as possible about your business that is, as far as he's concerned, relevant to going ahead with the transaction. It's not only the buyer that will want that, it's assuming that the buyer is borrowing money, it's the buyer's lender who will want that, or rather, put it this way, the lender's lawyers will want that. The experience we have when dealing with the lender's lawyers varies hugely. It can be quite refreshing at times to find a lawyer acting for the lender who is prepared to take a pragmatic approach to things and know that there isn't anything gold-plated in this world. Whereas with other lawyers acting for the lenders, they seem to think otherwise. So we do want to work with you in preempting that. We do want to ask you the searching questions. We want to identify where there are problems, and we want to work with you to remedy those problems and pull together all of the information that we know the buyer is going to want to ask you for. It's absolutely essential that the information that eventually goes from us to the buyer's lawyers is accurate. So that's where I go back to what I said before. We don't simply act as a postbox. We will ask you the questions. You will give us the information. You might give us other information quite voluntarily without us asking for it. Whatever comes through, we will review it. We will go through it with the legal brains that we have, and we will talk to you and we will distill it. So eventually, we are all absolutely 100% satisfied it is detailed and accurate. And that's extremely important, because if it isn't detailed and accurate and the buyer goes ahead reliant on it, and it turns out that it's material in some respect, that inaccuracy is material in some respect, they will be coming back to you for a claim. So it's important to get that right. Again, just emphasizing the point, it requires significant input from you, your accounting team, your legal team. Hutchings selling agents will also be involved throughout the process, more so than most agents, if not all. Hutchings do get involved. They do chivvy folks along various things, and they do help keep the process going. Having gone through all of that, we then come on to producing the documents, the legal documents. The main document being the purchase agreement. Well, in your case, a sale agreement, the sale and purchase agreement. It's the agreement under which you will be agreeing to sell and the buyer will be agreeing to buy your pharmacy. It will set out warranties, indemnities, and tax provisions. The warranties are the promises that the buyer will be asking you to give, that there isn't anything else material about the business that you've not told him. It will be asking you things such as that you have paid all your tax on time, that you've never been involved in a tax investigation, that you've never had an employee claim against you, that you've never had a GPHC investigation. There are all of these sorts of promises. There are pages of them. And the process that we've already gone through, it will identify to us where there might be issues with these warranties. It'll contain any indemnities. So if there is a potential tax investigation, if there is a potential unpaid VAT liability, if there is a potential employee claim, the buyer may well be asking you to give him an indemnity should that arise after the buyer has completed. And the tax provisions, these are distinctly separate tax warranties and the tax indemnity that your accountants and their accountants will be very involved in to make sure that the dark arts of tax avoidance, tax schemes, etc., are all covered off. That's fortunately not something we get too involved with, but there we are. Okay, the next key document, the disclosure letter. I've already mentioned the warranties and that there are pages and pages of the promises and assurances. When we go through those, we don't think, oh, well, that's a bit iffy. We don't know if we can say that or not. We don't strike it out. It's left in. On the odd occasion, we will amend them. But the way we deal with any qualifications, any issues on the warranties is by the disclosure letter. So just going back, you've not had any unpaid VAT issues. If you have had an unpaid and you've had penalties, we will set it under disclosure letter. So that disclosure letter will then act to qualify all of these warranties. So after the buyer has completed, they cannot come back to you and said, hey, we found this out, it's a breach of the warranty, therefore we'll bring in this claim. We can say, well, no, there's a disclosure letter there, and the disclosure letter let you know about it. And part of the disclosure letter, it will say, you are deemed to know everything we've told you in all of that documentation and all the replies to your inquiries and everything else we've given you. You're deemed to know about everything that's in there. And then over and above that, you're deemed to know about whatever searches would tell you. So if you haven't gone off and done all of your usual searches, then tough, you're deemed to know about what they will reveal. And then over and above all of that, there are these specific disclosures that we're going to tell you about. And we will then set those out. So that's quite an involved document. Property documents, already mentioned that this can be the main point of contention, bugbear, the main aspect of it that will take up the time. We have our regular weekly meetings every Friday here, and Laura is our property guru. And she's the one who is usually tearing her hair out and has the most to say in those meetings about the problems with the property. But we will go through that. And you should expect any solicitors you instruct to deal with this to do the same. We will go through the property aspects. We will review your title. We will deal with the landlord's We will contact the landlords almost on day one to flag up with them what's going on. And we won't be putting the lease extension into place straight away. We won't be putting any variations in the lease straight away. What we'll be doing is getting the landlord agents to agree in principle that that's what we can do. We will be getting them to say that if there is to be an assignment, what they may require, guarantors, rent deposits. It's a process that we will be going through, and an evolutionary process to eventually achieve a position whereby all of the property issues, we've all got them all lined up, ready to go, to get this to an oven-ready condition. I hope you don't mind me continually using that. Okay, ancillary documents. These are lawyers' documents. Alex in particular has his bugbear about these, the use of these. Board minutes, resignation letters, stock transfer forms, particularly board minutes. Every company, whatever decision it makes, should always have formally a minute of it, a board minute. We hardly ever see these actually in reality. It's not a problem. We deal with it, we get around it, and we create board minutes for the transaction that are important. Resignation letters. If you are selling the shares in the company, you will be resigning as directors and employees. You'll need to confirm that you have no claims. Stock transfer forms are the documents to achieve a sale. Share certificate indemnities, and all other sorts of forms that particularly lenders, lawyers might want to conjure up and think about. Employees is quite an important one. As you will probably all know, the employees, whether you're selling your well, if you're selling a company, the employees are there, they're employees of the company. If you're selling the business as an asset sale, the employees will automatically transfer over under the TUPE regulation. So what we need to do is to get the information from you about the employees. An anonymized schedule, and that's very important. You don't want to breach the data protection regulations. Sending out details of the staffing contractual arrangements. That will also ask, well, who's on maternity leave, who's absent for any other absences, and any disciplinary issues. These are all aspects that the buyers, solicitors will be wanting to know so that they can advise their client on the employee position and what the buyer will be taking on. I've mentioned the transfer undertakings. Where there is this asset sale, there will be an automatic transfer. There's an obligation in there to inform and consult. So you as a seller will have to consult with your employees. You will have to at some point formally tell them what's going on. And the buyer should be telling you whether they're proposing any changes to their employment, and buyer's obligation to notify proposed changes. And you would then have to inform the employees if that were in the offing. Okay, we've gone through all of that. We've got the documents into place. We've got it all signed up. Just need to go to completion. Waiting for the cash.
Tim, just quickly before we do go through to completion, which obviously is the exciting bit.
Yeah.
I've just got an eye on time, and we're just a little bit over. So I just wanted to try and keep us on track. Sorry, I don't want to make you rush or cut you short, but keep an eye on that. I'll hand back to you.
Thank you. Apologies for that, folks. Okay, the cash from lenders to buyers, solicitor to your solicitor, then into your bank account. It can take a long time. Sometimes it doesn't arrive before close of banking that day. When we've got the cash, we will agree completion, and that is simply done by telephone. We telephone each other. The days of having a formal meeting long since gone. We will call you, say, we've completed. The cash is on its way to your account. You will then have a physical handover. You'll have already had discussions with the buyers ahead of this, and you'll have already agreed in practice what you're going to be doing about handing over. So that will be very much down to you on the ground. Post-completion, well, we have apportionment. There will be some periodic costs to come in that will remain to be sorted out on a share sale. you'll have formal completion accounts. The accountants will be involved in agreeing those, usually takes up to 3 months, and there might be a balancing payment to be paid either way. And then my final slide, Sam, thank you. Common issues, property. I've mentioned the property a few times, so I don't need to go over it now too much. If you do own the property and you're granting a lease, you'll need consent from your lender. And rights of way, well, Laura asked me to put this in. Just issues on the property. There can be all sorts of problems on the title, and one we quite commonly come up with, lack of rights of way. Buyer funding, I've mentioned the buyer will almost certainly require funding. The buyers are lawyers, the borrowers, the lenders are lawyers. They influence the transaction hugely in terms of timescale and the work involved, and it does vary. And NHS consent, asset sales, it is taking a long time. Don't sit back and think it doesn't. There are certain pharmacy owners that will not agree to a change of ownership application going in until they've exchanged. If you do that, you lose 3 to 4 months. You as a seller agree to get the application in early. We put protection for you in place just in case a transaction doesn't go through. So don't worry about that. And then I can't see the bottom of that slide. Time applications, oh, well, I've already dealt with that.
Okay, well, thank you, Tim. I'm just going to go back a slide if I can. I'm just going to find our next bit for me, but I wondered if Laura, you could just explain. I don't know if it's a quick thing to explain, but I don't know what was meant by rights of way that you said was in there. What was that?
Yeah, we've just, I guess sometimes some particular issue sticks in your brain for a very long time. And we had a pharmacy deal where there were it was sort of leading up a private road that was within the next door property ownership, and there weren't sufficient rights to actually access the full road. So you could probably get halfway to your pharmacy, but then you were pretty much stuck. And you know, we sort of identified these things as issues, and I mean, it is resolved finally, but it's one of those things that sort of was met with resistance initially, until everybody sort of realized, oh dear, you know, we really had better get it sorted out. And like I say, it's just one of those things that sticks with you forever.
I mean, I'm laughing, and it sounds like maybe it's not a laughing matter for you.
Well, it is now. It's over.
Yeah, okay. The kind of thing that perhaps you wouldn't, you know, think of beforehand, but you know, now, you know, you can see that's something that needs to be looked at and considered before, like a lot of the points we're covering today.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, Tim. Thank you, Laura. Just a reminder, if you have any questions, you can put these in the Q&A section of your webinar portal screen. I can see that a couple have come in already. I'll take a look at those towards the end. In fact, if any of the other panelists want to have a look at those and see if there's any that you want to jump on, or you want to mark them as perhaps too long to answer at the end, and we can, you know, pick them up after. Have a look at those now. And I will move on to our final panelist tonight, Atif Butt from Hutchings Accountants. Atif will be advising on the accounting aspects relating to a pharmacy sale and how you can reduce your tax liabilities so you get more money in your pocket. Atif, over to you.
Thanks, Sam. And hi, everyone. My name's Atif Butt, and I'm the Senior Accountant at Hutchings Accountants, pharmacy sales specialist for over 30 years. Today, we're talking about the steps to achieving a successful pharmacy sale. We've heard some excellent points from Paul and Tim on coming to market and the legal aspects, and now I'll be focusing on accounting and tax matters so you can get a comprehensive idea of what you need to be thinking about and when. We'll be covering preparing for sale, pre-sale issues, due diligence, the legal process, completion, the completion accounts, and what happens after completion. Let's start by talking about the first step, preparing for sale and understanding your tax position. If you're thinking of selling your business in the future, it's never too early to start getting ready, even if you don't plan to sell for many years. Being properly prepared can make a huge difference in not only the price you get, but how much you're left with after paying the tax man. This has never been as important as it is now, with a number of risks and uncertainties facing the pharmacy sector and beyond. We've all seen how the COVID-19 pandemic has changed our lives in a way that would have been unimaginable at the start of last year. As we continue to see restrictions in place across the country, it's clear this is something that will continue to have a huge impact on us for some time to come. The 1st of January 2021 also saw the UK's departure from the European Union, with the UK economy facing an unprecedented challenge to recover from these two shocks. We're also likely to see changes in tax reliefs coming in the near future. With measures introduced to keep the economy afloat costing hundreds of billions of pounds, the government needs to find ways of increasing its revenue. The recent budget saw increases in the rates of corporation tax announced for the coming years. The Chancellor has also commissioned a review on capital gains tax, which is an obvious choice for the next target for change, as it's currently charged at lower rates than income tax. The government made significant changes to entrepreneurs' relief in last year's budget, which I'll talk about later, and it's possible that we will see further changes to come, or even the relief being abolished completely. Sector and market conditions. Paul talked about the current state of the market and how it's been affected by current events, but as we've seen, there's a number of factors that can change things significantly over the coming years. Of course, it's impossible for us to predict exactly what's going to happen now and in the future, but the best way to manage these risks is to be prepared. Once you've decided you want to sell your pharmacy, be sure to get specialist advice that takes your individual circumstances into account. This will help you work out the best strategy for the eventual sale, having considered the accounting, legal, and marketing perspectives. At Hutchings Accountants, we start by reviewing your accounts and tax position to recommend the most tax-efficient way to structure your sale and extract the benefits. Getting this right can have huge implications that could make a difference of hundreds of thousands of pounds to your tax bill. It's really important to look at this as early as possible, as getting the best tax treatment sometimes involves making changes to the business years in advance of an eventual sale. If your pharmacy is trading through a limited company, the sale can be structured as a share sale or an asset sale, as Tim explained earlier. To decide on the right structure of the sale from a tax point of view, we calculate what your estimated tax bill would be from each option, as there's a considerable difference depending on which way you go. A share sale means you'll be taxed personally on the gain and pay capital gains tax. An asset sale would mean the company selling the business and paying corporation tax, and you're being subject to a further personal tax charge when you take out the profits. If you're considering a company share sale or personal asset sale, you may qualify for Business Asset Disposal Relief, or BADR, formerly known as Entrepreneurs Relief. BADR is a relief that can apply when someone sells part or all of their business, and means you only need to pay tax at a rate of 10% on the gain as long as certain conditions are met. Each individual has a lifetime limit of £1 million worth of gains that can qualify, which has recently been reduced from the previous lifetime limit of £10 million. In a share sale, the qualifying conditions are that you need to hold at least 5% of the shares and voting rights in the company, be either an employee or officer of the company, and the company also needs to be a trading company. These conditions need to be met for at least 24 months before the disposal. So, without business asset disposal relief, if you were to sell your business for £1 million, you would be liable to capital gains tax at 20%, which is £200,000. But if you qualified for BADR, this would be reduced to 10%, meaning you'd only need to pay £100,000, which is a huge saving. However, there are circumstances where you may not qualify for the relief. For example, when you're trading through a limited company which also owns investment assets such as shares or property, or which has a high level of cash at the point of sale. It's important to identify any problems as early as possible so you can take the necessary steps to remedy them. If you're considering selling your pharmacy in the next few years, we recommend you take advantage of our Roadmap to Sale service, which is aimed at pharmacy owners who'd like to increase the business's value before they sell. Using an initial valuation prepared by Hutchings Consultants, we identify the key performance indicators affecting the value and look at how those could be improved. We also look at any issues picked up in our review of the accounts and tax position and work out the steps necessary to resolve them to ensure you get the most favourable tax treatment when the time comes. Finally, we map out a list of prioritised targets of what we want the business to achieve and a timeline over which we want to achieve them. This can be things like reducing stock holding and wastage, improving the business gross profit margin, reducing staff costs, and making sure the sale will qualify for BADR. As part of the service, we use customized management reports to analyze and monitor the business's performance each quarter and ensure we're on track to meet your targets for improvement. We also compare your pharmacy to similar pharmacies in a process called benchmarking. These management reports help us to look at how the potential market value of the business is changing over time and make sure that we're moving in the right direction. Twice a year, we review the results and re-evaluate our plan where necessary. That way, we can also factor in any changes in circumstance and revise our targets where appropriate. The aim of this process is to increase the value of the pharmacy as much as possible before it's put on the market. And it's important to remember that every £100 spent on getting the right professional advice and input could increase the profitability of your business by tens of thousands, by thousands of pounds, which in turn can increase the value of your pharmacy by tens of thousands when it's time to sell. Now, as we've said, preparation is key, and it's worth looking in a bit more detail at some of the things we commonly see in pharmacy share sales that can cause problems or present opportunities. I talked earlier about the conditions for BADR. If you have a company with more than one share class, this may need to be looked at, as some of the shares may not qualify for the relief at present. Your company also won't qualify for the relief if it owns too many investments or holds too much cash, as HMRC would no longer consider it to be just a trading company. The level of cash and directors' loans can have other implications to your sale, which may need to be considered so that it can be dealt with as part of the transaction. Investment property owned by a company can cause problems with BADR, but we more commonly see pharmacy companies that own the trading premises they operate from. Sometimes these are included in business sales, but there are cases where the business owners want to take them out of the company before the sale so they can give the new owners a lease and benefit from the rental income in their retirement. It's important to take advice on the most tax efficient way to do this. Another key area that's worth considering early on is what you want to take from the business in the form of salary, pensions and dividends in the years leading up to your sale. Tax rates on salaries and dividends are generally much higher than the 10% tax rate you can benefit from on a sale with BADR, so it makes sense to take less salary and dividends from the business if these are going to be taxed on you personally at a higher rate. This will mean the company's cash balance will be higher at the point of sale, and care needs to be taken that it's not so high that HMRC no longer consider the company a trading company and BADR is lost. However, it's also important to remember that some dividend income is taxed at 7.5% and can actually represent a saving over the rate you'd get on a sale, even with BADR. So it's well worth engaging in some tax planning in your final years of ownership to make sure you optimize your takings so that you're paying the lowest rate of tax overall on your lifetime earnings. These are some of the things to consider before a sale, but now let's talk very quickly about what happens once you've found a buyer. Now, Tim set out some of the details here, but I'm just quickly going to run through what happens once a buyer is found and the deposit has been paid. The next steps are the due diligence process and the finalising of the share purchase agreement. As accountants, our job is to work alongside your legal team to make this all run as smoothly as possible. The due diligence process gets underway and the buyer's accountants request a list of information. In a share sale, as Tim said, the buyers will want to go back over several years so they can be as comfortable as possible about the history of the company. Your lawyers will also go through the sale agreement with the buyer's lawyers to agree a finalised version. As accountants, we'll also review this from a tax and accounting perspective, suggest any changes to the main terms and covenants, and carefully go through the warranties to make sure the buyers are made aware of any exceptional items or circumstances. You can see how important it is to engage accountants and solicitors who specialise in pharmacy sales to get this bit right. Because pharmacy is all we deal with and we see so many sale agreements in the course of our work, we know what is appropriate and what is excessive to warrant. And so with our combined experience, we can work together to limit your risk. In a share sale, the total amount you receive from selling your shares is made up of the agreed price for the goodwill and fixed assets of the business and a further adjustment for the net asset position of the business at the point of sale. Now, the net asset position is made up of the company's current assets, which are things it owns or is owed, like cash, stock, money owed by the NHS and HMRC in the form of VAT refunds, minus the company liabilities, which are things it owes out, like money owed to suppliers or HMRC. If there are more assets than liabilities, an additional payment is made to the seller for the net asset value. But if the liabilities are more than the assets, a deduction is made from the goodwill payment to take that into account. Now, when the buyers are happy with the results of the due diligence exercise and the sale agreement is close to being agreed by both parties, a target completion date is agreed for ownership of the pharmacy to transfer from the seller to the buyer. It's generally helpful if this can be at the end of a month, as it just makes the whole process a little bit easier in working out the transition. Now, once the date's been agreed for completion, we need to provide the buyer's side with an estimate for the company's net asset position at the target completion date. Now, of course, we can't provide exact figures at this point, so what we do is estimate this as best we can. This estimate then gives the buyer and their advisors an idea of the net current asset payment or deduction that will need to be made in addition to payments for the goodwill and fixed assets. Once completion accounts have been prepared and agreed by both parties, several months down the line, a final payment can be made for the actual amounts due as per the accounts. When we review sale agreements, there are a number of things we look at carefully. For example, the proposed method to calculate the net current asset figure, as this will affect your final payment. The agreement also sets out the terms by which the business must produce the completion accounts and what the procedure would be if the accounts were not agreed by the buyer. We also go through the tax warranties in the agreements very carefully and cross-check within the company's accounts for the last few years to produce a list of any facts or circumstances that need to be disclosed to the buyers, and these are then collated by your solicitor in the disclosure letter, as Tim explained. The tax warranties are very detailed, and it's essential they're looked at by experienced lawyers and accountants familiar with your business and pharmacy sales. Putting the time in to get this exercise right means you can sign the sale agreement with peace of mind and confidence that your interests are protected. The next thing we need to consider is the completion accounts. These need to be prepared with extra care and attention to make sure they're in line with the sale agreement and also represent the closing position of the business as accurately as possible, so that you can benefit from all the profits from your period of ownership of the business without paying for any of the business expenses from after this date. Once the accounts have been prepared on this basis, they're sent to the buyer's accountants, and under the terms of the sale agreement, they have a specified period in which to inform us of any disputes or to accept the accounts. After reviewing the accounts, the buyer's accountants will either accept them or send a list of any items they believe should be included or removed from the accounts, e.g. payments made by the company after completion that they believe were incurred before completion. We would go through any points of dispute and try to agree them with the buyers and revise the accounts accordingly so they're accepted by both parties. The buyer will then release the final balancing payment for the net current assets, which means you will now receive full payment for your business. The final step is declaring the sale on your personal tax return and calculating and paying the tax due. The sale will fall in a tax year ended 5th of April and would need to be reported in your tax return for that year. This would then need to be submitted and tax paid by the 31st of January the following year. As an example, if you sold your business on the 1st of June 2021, this would fall in the 2021/22 tax year, and your tax return and payment would be due to HMRC by the 31st of January 2023. Now, if you were to receive a total of £1 million for your business and its assets and paid professional fees of £50,000, your total gains from the sale would be £950,000, and the capital gains tax due on this after the application of your annual allowance and business asset disposal relief would be just under £94,000. Once we calculate your tax bill, we can also advise you on ways that you could reduce it. If you haven't already, after the sale, you should also take advice on estate planning and your will. It's also worth considering your exposure to inheritance tax, or IHT. When you own your business, you benefit from business property relief, which means if you were to die, the business assets would be outside of the scope of IHT. But once the business is sold, business property relief no longer applies, and your share of the cash proceeds would be liable to IHT if you were to pass away unexpectedly. We also advise all our clients to talk to an independent financial advisor who can guide you on investments you can make for a tax-efficient income in retirement. And apart from that, the next thing you need to worry about is what to spend the rest of your money on.
What to spend the rest of your money on. What a nice position to be in. Thank you, Atif. Okay, bear with me. Just going to take back control here. Okay, so to our final Q&A section. There's been a lot of information tonight. Thank you to everyone who is still with us, which it seems like is most of you. So thank you. Hopefully we'll get time to get through a few of these questions. I actually, I don't know, Paul or anyone, if you've had time to look at the questions that have come in. I know we received a couple beforehand over email, and then there's a few up here I can see in the Q&A section. I've been just monitoring the presentation side of things. So Paul, I don't suppose you've taken a look at the Q&A, or has anyone yet?
I could jump in here. I think there's a nice question for me at the end here, where an anonymous attendee has asked, how should the COVID loan given by the NHS be dealt with if no agreement has been met by the time the sale is completed?
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Atif. I'll if you just take that question and signal once you've kind of finished answering. I'm sure it'll be obvious. I'll just take a look at these questions now and see if there's anything else that we can try and get in today. We're just a little bit over time, but we've got time for hopefully at least you know, sort of 2 or 3 or questions. So I'll hand back to you, Atif, and then I'll have a look at what else has come in.
Lovely, thanks, Sam. So our questioner asks, how should the COVID loan given by the NHS be dealt with if no agreement is reached by a point of sale, and is this something that could affect the purchase price? So this is a situation we're seeing with sales coming through at the moment, because as you know, pharmacies have received a number of advance payments during the COVID pandemic in order to help them with cash flow. Now, the current position is that these are loans, they do need to be paid back, and it's not actually income for the pharmacy, but there are representations going on from pharmacists, from pharmacy bodies to say to the government, to NHS England, that pharmacies need to keep this money, and there is a hope that this may not need to be paid back, although it's far from certain at the moment. So the way that we deal with this in accounts is that we do show the money as a loan. We don't show it as income. We don't pay tax on it because we're not sure at the moment if it needs to go back. But how we've seen it dealt with in a few transactions is something that's picked up. It's referenced in the share purchase agreement, and in some cases what we've seen is the funds being held in escrow by solicitors. So essentially neither the buyers nor the sellers get the money, and when in the future the issue is decided and we know whether it needs to go back to the NHS or whether the pharmacy can keep it, it's then dealt with so that the if that is the case and pharmacies can keep the money, the seller can get the benefit of it at that stage. So even though it's a slightly tricky issue, we don't know exactly what's going to happen with it, there is a mechanism in place to make sure that it can be dealt with, and so that pharmacy sellers aren't losing out. So I hope that's a good answer to the question. I'll hand back to Sam.
Brilliant, thanks, Artif. Okay, so yeah, I can see there's a few questions here, and if we don't get time to finish to get through all of them, which honestly I can see that we're not going to have time to get to all of them, but we will answer every single question directly. We'll follow up with you, and in fact, I think even if your question gets answered, it might be useful for you to have like a response in writing. So you know, as people do submit questions, we should be able to identify in the back end the kind of login or email address. Ashley, maybe you could confirm this, but I think we'll be able to identify who it was that asked the question, so we can just get you an answer confidentially and just to the email address that you've logged into tonight's webinar with. But if there are any questions that anyone else feels that they will be able to answer relatively succinctly now.
I was just going to pick up, Sam. I've seen the questions coming in about what happens about your PMR computer lease. Does the buyer pay remainder of term? Fortunately, this isn't sort of something that I've had sort of come up for quite some time, but I'd certainly advise if somebody is considering selling, then if their lease is sort of coming up to the end of the sort of contract period, then they should try, ideally, I think, to avoid extending that lease or tying a new owner into a potentially long lease. In the past, we have sort of had issues where perhaps the buyer is an existing pharmacy owner. You know, they've got their own agreements and systems run throughout their group, for example, and they've been sort of keen not to take on a long sort of lease. So wherever sort of possible, I ideally recommended not to tie a buyer into, as I say, a long-term sort of commitment there. Tim and Alex might want to sort of just comment from a sort of legal perspective. So I think I'm sure it will depend on the whether it's an asset sale or share sale, again, how that sort of lease is treated within the purchase agreement. But as I say, in the past we have had buyers who they've made it sort of quite clear as a condition of their offer that they don't want to take on that lease and those sort of costs. So in effect, it has affected the final sale price. But fortunately, that's not something that happens very often in my experience.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind just jumping in on the legal side, Paul. I mean,
Well, yeah, thanks, Alex.
Nobody's heard a great deal from me, so I'll throw in my sort of two penneth worth, as it were. So as Paul has said, you know, ideally, if you're sort of coming up to renewal anytime soon, perhaps try and push that off, see if you can get a shorter-term contract. Buyers can either be one of two ways. They can be fussy about it or not. For new owners, first-time buyers, they tend to be less fussy. As Paul has said, if they have contracts with other parties, they're an existing operator, then they're probably going to be more fussy. Obviously, if it's a share sale, your PMR contract is going to be in the name of the company anyway. So, you know, the expectation is more so that the buyer will take that on because it's in the name of the company. It's a contract that the company is party to. Where things get a bit more sticky is in an asset purchase, where the contract with the PMR supplier is in your name, your company's name or whatever, and there isn't an automatic expectation that that's going to go across to the buyer. So yeah, I agree with Paul's message, maybe hang on, don't sign any long contracts. If you do already have a long contract and you're coming up to a sale, it's not an issue, but it may well be something that you unfortunately will have to eat the cost of paying off and getting the buyer out of it.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Alex. I think we've already got time for at least one more. If there's anything else that anyone thinks that we can kind of get through.
I can take another one, Sam, which I should be able to answer quite quickly.
Yeah, sorry that I'm asking all the time for the quick answers. But I can I'm just aware of everyone's time. We're appreciate everyone that's attended this webinar, and obviously, all of you for presenting and creating the content and sharing it with us today. So yeah, okay. If you've got one more,
and we've got a question.
Just quickly, if there's anyone else that really wants to get anything in after Artif, we've probably then got time for one more, and that'll be us. So Artif, over to you.
Yeah, and just to say as well that do continue sending in your questions. We will try and answer all of them individually afterwards, even if we can't do so on air today. So a quick one from me. We've got a question in here to say, does the COVID grant and not loan count as income that you have to pay tax on? And very quick answer for that one, it does. So it would be classed as income. It would be taxable.
Of course.
Unlike the loan where it needs to be paid back and it's not taxable, it is going to increase our profits, even though it's a government grant. So yeah, yes is the answer.
Yes is the answer. Okay, not the answer I imagine that we were hoping for, but at least it's one of those things that at least if you know, you can plan for that. In ways that you were talking about earlier, Artif.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any more before we wrap up?
I can answer a quick one, Sam. I've had an inquiry come in about the Help to Sell scheme. What's the ballpark figure for ultimate fees? Good question. But basically, I think the best thing, understand, obviously, trying to get an idea. The fees, we're obviously looking at agency costs, we're looking at accountancy costs and solicitors costs. So it's not an easy one to answer because it depends on, there's a lot of sort of component parts of the sale, as we sort of discussed this evening. So for example, if it's a company share sale or an asset sale, if there's a property being sold, for example. For anybody with queries about the scheme, please do contact us directly. Happy to run through everything with you, and as I say, very transparent. But as I say, it's just not. I'm finding it as an easy sort of answer or quick answer.
Okay. There isn't a kind of a one-size-fits-all way of slicing it, but it depends on how the your company and the sale is going to be structured, and also the value of the business and those sorts of things I imagine come into it. But one thing I do understand is that we'll from what you said earlier, that the fees will all be stated and agreed up front, so there won't ever be a point where you're wondering what it's going to be. The point is, we a pharmacy owner can come to you or come to us and establish that cost and then make a decision whether that's
absolutely.
Sam, is it just fair comment to make for all of the attendees that they do have our contact detail? I'm seeing that there are quite a few questions here, and it's going to take too long to go through each of them. But certainly from my point of view and my colleagues' points of view, any legal questions, absolutely give us a call, phone us, and we will always have time to have a chat with you. And you won't find a bill landing on your desk for that initial conversation. So any aspect, certainly give me a call, and we will undoubtedly be able to deal with the query.
Okay. Thanks, Tim. Well, yeah, I mean, thank you also to Paul, Artif, Laura, Alex, for the talks and time this evening. And also, I want to say thank you to everyone who attended, and a special thanks to all of you who stuck with us right to the end. We will, as Tim kind of mentioned might be a good idea, we will follow up with an email later in the week. It's going to be me that gets that together. So I'm going to try and do that tomorrow, and we will answer any questions we didn't get around to this evening. And feel free, like Tim said, to contact us and ask further questions. I think the most important thing is to start a dialogue. From all of the presentations that I saw today, the kind of overriding point to take home was to be prepared and to start preparing. So wherever you are in the process, get in touch with us. Because it can't be too soon. Okay, so from all of us here at Hutchings Consultants, Clarke Mairs, Hutchings Accountants, and of course the MPA, thank you. Good night.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.